Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining our Faculty of Agricultural and Food Sciences conversation series. My name is Nazem Chichek. I'm the Associate Dean Research in the faculty, and the topic of today's conversation is Sustainable Solutions for Northern Food Systems. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that the University of Manitoba is located on the original lands of Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and on the homeland of the Métis Nation. We respect the treaties made on these territories, we acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to moving forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. So if you're new to the Faculty Conversation Series, it is our virtual seminar series that highlights some of the very interesting and innovative research that's happening in our faculty. And we try to do that in an engaging discussion format. And if you missed our previous seminars, there's an opportunity to view them right here on our faculty's YouTube channel. And as another option, you can also find links to these seminars at our knowledge translation portal, which is called the Manitoba Agriculture and Food Knowledge Exchange, or MAKE. And that's on makemanitoba.ca, which highlights our faculty's research generally as it relates to consumers and producers, with interesting links to podcasts, infographics, fact sheets, and even some recipes. Okay, so today we have three speakers who will share with us a short summary of their research, and then we'll engage in a discussion together. You as a viewer can also participate in this conversation by sending in your questions and comments through the chat platform Slido. And right now, I'd like to call on Crystal Jorgensen, the faculty's communications specialist, to provide us with some guidance on how the audience can participate in today's presentation.
Thanks, Nazem. Welcome everybody who joined us today. We hope that you help us out with some questions for our speakers. And to do that, you can open maybe another browser window and visit slido.com. And when you're there, enter the event code #NorthernFood, all one word. That'll get you into our event. And feel free to start asking your questions at any time. And when we get to the Q&A portion, we'll work through them in chronological order. The question field is a little bit limited in character count, so keep your questions succinct. And maybe to kick it off, I'd love to hear where people are tuning in from today, if you don't mind dropping that into the Slido chat to get us going. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Nazem, and we can revisit these instructions a little later on.
Great. Thanks, Crystal. So today's topic explores northern food systems, and specifically how our researchers and community collaborators have been working to find solutions for the challenge of sustainable, nutritious, and affordable food for northern communities. As we all know, food accessibility has long been an issue in remote regions of Canada, due in part to the logistics of growing produce and crops in northern climates, but also as a result of historic injustices due to colonialism, high cost of transportation, and just general lack of availability of healthy food choices. So this in turn really has led to poor diet and therefore associated health issues. So to address the first challenge, researchers and community members have been exploring different ways, innovative ways of growing vegetables locally. So these range from using shipping containers as greenhouses and growth pods that utilize alternative energy to heat them, to really high-tech vertical farms that utilize LED lights and hydroponics in their design. So also work on the way to assess the nutritional value of these northern crops and food products and their impact on community health, particularly in the area of chronic diseases such as diabetes. But perhaps even more critically important is the sustainability of such systems. So how the community takes ownership of these systems, provides learning opportunities, excuse me, and engage the whole community in the process. So today we will hear from two of our academics who work in this area of northern food production systems, and a special guest who is directly involved in the design and maintenance of our smart farm. They will be sharing their goals, challenges, and opportunities as they see it from their respective areas, and how they are working to achieve food security for communities. So I'd like to introduce you to our guests, and let's start with Chong Zhang. Chong is a professor in biosystems engineering at the U of M and a registered professional engineer. His research interest is controlled environments for plant and animal systems. And for the past 15 years, he's been working on energy-efficient greenhouses for food production in cold climates. So over for a short introduction to you, Chong.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for the introduction, Nazem. As Nazem just mentioned, by training, I'm an engineer. My research area is basically try to develop engineering or technology solutions to food production. For the past 30 years, I've been working on controlling environment for animal systems like pig barns and for greenhouse production. The way I actually looking at this whole food production system from the engineering angle is to provide the best environment for animals or for plants with the minimum input. So I started with working with animals for probably the first 10 years of my career at the University of Manitoba. Then I switched to the plant systems. So in principle, they both actually are the same system. So the way I would put it is, I used to work in buildings to raise pigs. So now I'm actually trying to grow plants in pig barns. So it's basically we're looking at the controlled environment. Now there's a bit story actually how I switched sort of from animal to plants. Probably it's back in early 20s. Actually, it's 2001, and there was actually an energy crisis. The natural gas price actually went up. So I was approached by local producers. They basically asked me if there's any actually sort of engineering solutions to sort of lower the heating cost in the greenhouses. At that point, I didn't even know actually there's a greenhouse industry in Manitoba. So I said, I'll take a look at the issues. So I worked with the local producer, and we actually did some experiments on different heating methods, and specifically actually using the root zone heating. So that's how I started with the greenhouse projects. Then in 2003, sort of, I got into a different sort of greenhouse studies. There was actually a couple of local producers. They actually got this solar energy greenhouse package from China. They didn't know how to put it up. There's actually sort of pretty complicated drawings and how you store energy in the greenhouse. So I started working with them and spent quite a bit of time to actually set up the greenhouse and did all the testing there. And at that point, I was talking to the community and specifically, I guess, some indigenous groups and also people at Manitoba Agriculture. We were talking about food security issues in the north. And then I thought, well, if we can actually make the greenhouse work in southern Manitoba, maybe there's engineering solution actually for producing vegetables in the north. So I actually made my first proposal of a container system for vegetable production in early 2000, probably 2005, in that range, but didn't go very far because of the funding issues. Then in 2014, there was actually a report published by the Council of Canadian Academies. They were talking about food insecurity issues in the northern community. And after that, there's quite a bit interviews on the TV, like on CBC. There's some numbers really sort of struck me because they were talking about, food, regular food or vegetables about 5 times more expensive in the north. Then I thought maybe this is something we can actually contribute. So a group of us actually got together. We actually applied for a CFI grant, and we got the money. We actually built a facility on campus now for sustainable food production system for the northern climate, for northern communities. So ever since then, around 2015, so I've been working on different solutions to solving the food insecurity problem in the north. For the past few years, I really sort of settled on the mobile or the container farming systems. The reason for that is if we actually have to build something in the north, we have to ship it to the north. Container would be the best solution. So I've worked with different communities, try to actually build and demonstrate and evaluate those systems. And for the last few years, I actually tried to integrate the smart technologies, like smart sensors, actually into those systems. That's actually it's what I'm working on now. So that's a quick sort of introduction of myself, how I got into this research area.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for that, Chong. It's very interesting. It's interesting to hear the history and how long you've been trying to make this technology go here in Manitoba and in the north. And those issues you mentioned, I think, are very familiar as far as cost of food and availability to our next guest. That's Stephanie Cook, who is the Opaskwayak Smart Farm Operations Manager. I want to welcome her to our conversation. Before she joined the Smart Farm, Stephanie actually worked as a child and family services worker and a part-time preschool teacher for her community. Today, she's in charge of the general operations, such as maintenance of equipment, plant cycles, germination, etc., of the Smart Farm, the plant factory, and any other collaborations that are connected to the Opaskwayak Smart Farm. So I want to turn it over to you, Stephanie. If you could give you a brief introduction, that'd be great. Oh, you're muted, Stephanie. We're going to try see if we can. Yeah, there you go. Go ahead.
There we go. Can you hear me now? All right, we're good.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Hi. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephanie Cook. I am the now operations manager of the OCN Smart Farm. I've been with the Smart Farm since its establishment in February of 2016. As I said, I pretty much helped and worked with the Smart Farm in their development and working with the technology that came from South Korea. Basically, over the past 5 years, I've been helping them grow majority of leafy vegetables, but we did experiment, and at that time we grew up to, I think it was 76 different types of fruits and vegetables, mainly for like root types of vegetables. We grew radishes. We did a little bit experimenting with onions, leeks. We did grow beets. After that we moved into strawberries, bitter melons, mouse melons, just kind of experimenting and seeing exactly what we could do with the technology that had been brought over from South Korea. Initially, I was told that the technology would only have the capabilities of growing leafy vegetables, but with some persuasion and some guidance from my mentor, the late Isaac Young, with his help and knowledge of plant factories, we basically grew strawberries. It was minus 45 out. It was storming, blizzarding. We're up in the middle of the north, and yeah, it's something to see. Very very visual representation of what this technology was capable of doing, and yeah, it was just very eye-opening for myself. Funny story and true story. When they had initially brought the Smart Farm into the community, our first crop, I didn't eat any of it because I was too scared of it. Um, yeah, it was kind of funny. I was very hesitant and very taken aback because I grew up in an agricultural family, and you have that mindset that everything comes from soil. So I had to get over that fear, and it took me about a month after to get that comfortableness of eating the product. But yeah, and then learning how to work the technology and the different types of capabilities it had, the different energy settings, what would happen if you turned up the amperes, and all this interesting data information and data collection that the system was able to do was also remarkable, because coming from an agricultural background, you're most likely doing it on pen and paper, whereas here everything is on the screen. It gives you all the information that you need in order to grow optimally. So yeah, and yeah, just basically working through everything, working through certification, trying to get it recognized as a Power Smart product through Manitoba Hydro. What else have we been up to? And then working towards our certification and license to sell the product now. Yeah, so we have our provincial license so far. And thanks to COVID, I'm pretty sure everybody's suffering the same issue. We weren't able to we weren't able to bring an auditor up basically for our Canada Gap license. And that's basically what we're working on right now. And just learning how I recently spent time learning about microbiology management in the system, learning how to identify the good bacteria, bad bacteria, also learning about how to do air quality samples and how to test for yeast and mold. So constantly learning, constantly evolving with the program.
I love to hear that. I mean, these are so new, right? So you do have to
Yeah.
have your own way of dealing with these systems and understanding them. It's not always easy to understand some of the technical aspects of it, but I'm really happy to hear that it's a learning journey for you, and you're making good progress. So that's great. I'm gonna thanks, Stephanie. So I'm gonna move on and introduce our third speaker, and then we'll come back to the group and chat some more. Next up is Miyoung Soo, who is a professor in the Department of Food and Human Nutritional Sciences at the University of Manitoba. Miyoung is also a principal investigator in the Division of Neurodegenerative Disorders at the Canadian Centre for Agri-Food Research in Health and Medicine, which is located at the St. Boniface Hospital Research Centre. And her ongoing research involves studying the fundamental roles of dietary lipids in neural cell development and function of the brain and retina under alcoholic, diabetic, and obese conditions. And Miyoung has been working with OCN on the Smart Farm initiative. So, Miyoung, take it away.
Thank you for the introduction. And also, good afternoon, everyone. Maybe I can start how I get into this Smart Vertical Farm project. So OCN was my research community for identifying nutritional status of a pregnant woman who are consuming or not consuming alcohol during pregnancy. This baseline information will help us develop nutrition programs for mothers at risk of having children with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. I happen to have this fund to do this study in the First Nation communities. So while knocking on several doors of communities, OCN was the only one at the time who opened the door for our study. Since then, my PhD student Olina Kloss and I were driving 14 hours of a round trip each time to have a face-to-face meeting with a pregnant woman. So it was an easy project for me and for my students. However, we both appreciated the learning and understanding of a First Nation communities, cultures, and values through OCN. Of course, we are still on the learning curve in that aspect. So regarding a smart vertical farm, as Stephanie mentioned that they use the South Korean technology. I'm from South Korea, and also that I'm already in the community doing my own study. So it was natural to join to the health benefit study for the smart vertical farm project. So it was indeed a wow experience when I saw the OCN smart farm for the first time, and then also when I tasted the fresh vegetables right at the place, and crunch and fresh taste. When you have a fresh salad, you feel so like a fresh and healthy feeling. That's what exactly I felt. So then OCN sent their vegetable samples to my lab to measure the nutrient concentrations as well as microbial test for food safety. And compared to the samples purchased from the local grocery stores, vegetables from the OCN has a several-fold higher in majority of the nutrients. Vitamin C and the beta-carotenes, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and manganese, and so on. And also the microbial test came out for all negative. They tested for E. coli, Salmonella, Listeria, yeast, and mold, and so on. These initial analysis actually gave us some pretty good idea. And then why not growing functional vegetables against the chronic diseases, especially diabetes, which is endemic in northern communities. Anywhere that in the northern communities or First Nation communities you go and talk to them, they will say in terms of health wise, they will say diabetes, diabetes, diabetes. In fact, the OCN alone, 47.4% of the adults are diagnosed with the diabetes. Basically, it's almost a 1-to-1 ratio of adult populations are diabetic. So moving forward to this project in collaboration with the OCN team, and we want to identify first and then grow functional vegetables and enriching bioactive compounds by manipulating light and the nutrients, and then provide evidence on the efficacy of the raw vegetables as well as the processed vegetables, and develop culturally sensitive food products and food ingredients as well. And for my own specific interest is monitoring diabetes and other chronic diseases in collaboration with the St. Boniface Hospital. So overall, utilizing smart farm technology, of course, Dr. Qiang can increase the technology further. We hope to decrease the fresh food insecurity and reduce the imported vegetables from south and reduce diabetes rate in northern communities. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Miyoung. That was excellent and really surprising. Some of the data you provided here, as far as the prevalence of diabetes, but also the nutritional value of the vegetables you have grown in that setting and how they exceed much of what we purchase regularly down here, right? So that's very, very interesting. So thanks for that introduction. So now I really want to bring the group together to chat a little bit more in detail about some of these aspects. And, it's a really neat group because we have a technology specialist, we have a nutritional specialist, and we have a community partner at the table who can speak to uptake and training and certainly understanding what should be grown and what would be consumed, right? Those are all important aspects to this idea. So maybe I can start with a couple of questions to get us going. Let's start with Chong on some of the technology and energy aspects. And please, everybody else can jump in as well as we chat about this. One of the things that comes to mind is the energy source that you would be using to grow foods in the north. Obviously, it's a cold environment, the light is limited, and we always worried about carbon footprints and alternative energy versus diesel, for example. So can you speak to that a little bit on what possible energy sources could be used in such systems?
Sure, I'll get started and then others can sort of jump in because there's a lot of connections between the technology and the nutritional value of the crop. Like Miyoung just said, lighting is one of the key elements actually in the production system. We can actually change the lighting not only to improve the productivity, but also we can actually use it to make probably plant grow in a certain way to actually change the outcome of some compounds actually in the plant. But anyway, so it's a huge challenge. Energy actually is probably, I say, is the number one issue in this whole technology thing. If you think about how you're going to grow plants, I guess you need temperature, you need the lighting, which I guess it's a problem in the north, right? So it's getting cold in the wintertime and the dayland it's short. So in order to provide lighting and heating, we need energy. Now, we probably should break it down the system into different components. Now we can look at which energy source actually would be more suitable for the systems. And if you're looking at the typical sort of smart systems, we got LED lights, typical. Now we got some sort of heating system, which is actually a lot of potential there. We can actually figure out what energy source to use. Then there's energy requirement for moving things around, like pumping water and all that. That's smaller significant. If I want to sort of put some numbers on it, the lighting probably is the most significant one. A lot of calculations I've sort of done, lighting probably takes about 2/3 of the power requirement in terms of electricity. Heating, you can use different sources. Electricity, if the community is on grid. and otherwise you're going to have to figure out different ways of doing it. Now let's start with probably the most challenging part is the LED lighting. Now, when I started this whole research like 15 years ago, the LED is not very efficient, and but now the LED gets to the stage now, it's actually efficient enough to be used, even in some remote areas. There are two sort of advantages of using the LED. One is it produces light very efficiently. It requires very little electricity to produce light in comparison with traditional lighting systems. The second one is actually you can actually fine-tune the spectrum of LED lights. So you get the spectrum you want for either the plant growth or actually to change the plant development. That is the second advantage. But unfortunately, at this point, there's no other way of running LED but using electricity. So if the electricity becomes an issue, then we're going to have to figure out different ways of doing it. In terms of energy sources, solar panel is probably one of the potential options. I've done some calculation. If anybody's interested, we can actually look at some numbers. But there's other sort of ways of getting electricity there. So one of research projects I'm doing now on campus actually is to look at the biomass for heating and producing electricity. So that's another sort of option there. But there's also a wind power and all that. We can put it all together. So maybe I'll stop here and then let other people jump in and then continue on.
Sure. Well, that's great. Thanks for that, Chong. Stephanie, if I could ask you on the energy side, what are you guys doing at OCN? Is that's obviously a grid-connected community, and but do you use electricity for heating, for example, in the facility?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm just worried about me constantly being cut off. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, we use LED lights, and they are spectrum LED lights. They have the what is it? They give off a purple hue. The ones we use, and they are hooked up into a controller. The heating source, actually, the amount of heat that our lights give off is close to nil. They can be running for 16 hours. You can go up to them, you can grab them, and they're not hot. So that's one of the cool things about ours. We've had Manitoba Hydro come in and inspect the power consumption of the whole plant factory. So to date, our actual hydro bill, I think, is about $222, $202.78, give or take, just depending on what we're producing in the smart farm at that time. So if we're producing something that requires a higher density of LED lighting, then we can turn up the controllers, which are controlling the lights, and give the strawberries the proper type of lighting that they need in order to flower and to produce fruit, which is really neat because while working on this project, I never had any understanding about electricity, about heating, diodes and all this fun stuff, amperes, and it was so fun to learn about, to tell you the truth. I get excited all the time because seeing what the technology is capable of doing and being able to control the energy consumption was really interesting to see because I grew up on a farm, so everything comes from the sun, and we only have so many weeks and so many months out of the year to grow, and being able to use the technology to grow 365 days a year and to grow also, I call them specialty products because some of the products that we've grown were not available. I think 2 of the items we sent for testing with Miyoung, there was nothing on the grocery store shelves to compare them to. So, that kind of also opened up other aspects of the food processing system for us. But it also exposed us too to all the different types of products that are available on the market because coming from a First Nations background myself, you're not exposed to those types of things like Mizuna. I would have never known what Mizuna was. Kohlrabies, what other types of things that were we exposed to? Green perilla, I think you call it shishu. It's a mint leaf. It's very sought after in Korean culture, apparently. We had a whole row of it, and I was we were completely clueless on what to do with it. And, we had to educate ourselves. Okay, well, how do they eat this? What is it used for? Why are they making us, try this out? And so it was lots of fun going through that and then learning how to adjust the lighting in order to get, like you can get the plants to grow fast or you can get them to grow very slow, in order to whatever. And it was just so much excitement and learning experience and learning curves and, all that fun stuff. But yeah, and then being able to see what the technology is capable of. Like I said, they initially told me in the beginning that we were only going to be growing leafy vegetables, and then my mentor brought, I think it was over 100 varieties of seeds to me, and I was kind of like taken aback when he brought all these seeds to me, and he's like, "Try this, try that, see what you guys can do." So, in the beginning we were all gung ho and tried all the seeds all at once. That we had to start learning that learning curve. Okay, well, you can't grow leafy vegetables with some root vegetables. You can't grow certain herbs with certain, root vegetables. And then even the other part, when we got to the fruit and we were learning, okay, we got to that part where we're like, okay, well, we're getting flowers, but we're not getting no fruit. What are we doing wrong? So again, having to learn, all right, well, we got to be the bees now. Okay, so how does that work? Okay, well, just like everything else works in nature, you got to identify the male and the female plant. So that was lots of fun too, having to go through all that. It was...
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you're replicating nature.
Stephanie, you have to learn all the electricity stuff. We are working on the smart systems. So eventually, hopefully, we're going to build a smart system. You don't have to learn about electricity.
Well,
you just need to go there and say, hey, turn on the lights.
Yeah, well, that was another issue that we ran into. Like, if you're gonna be bringing a smart farm up north, you got to remember a lot of First Nations communities have limited electrical hydro running into their community. A lot of them are diesel generated. I didn't even know. I thought those things had been phased out, but it's still very prevalent, especially in those isolated communities, eh? So again, that was another thing that was brought to light working on the project. So learning about that too, like internet even. I thought internet was good everywhere. Apparently it's not.
And Stephanie, listening to you, I'm so proud of you. I know that I saw you from the beginning, and then you are on the learning curve just like this, right? So
yeah,
you are the manager now that I think you know the most about how to manage this smart farm. I'm so proud of you.
thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I know.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
I was going to say, yeah, it excites me to talk about it because for me, it's a way towards food security for my people, for community members. It's bringing healthy food that's available to, things that aren't available normally. Little story, we had when we had that national recall of romaine lettuce across the country, right? Okay, well, we were one of the only producers in our little area that had romaine lettuce, and I don't know what in the world possessed us to plant 5,000 heads of romaine lettuce. But literally, by that fall week, that whole room was empty, and I was scared because I was like, "Why did you guys plant so much lettuce? Why did you plant so much romaine lettuce of all things?" And then the national recall came, and that happened, and it was just, and it was a real eye opener too, because it brought to light the issue of food safety too, like the production, like what goes into it, and then also having an opportunity to visit greenhouses and see what they're facing too. That's something too, like opens up a whole new ballpark for me.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I guess it's important that you are maybe the guinea pig in the mine, or whatever you want to call it, the canary in the mine. You are trying these things out, and then you communicating that across to your network, and people can learn from your experiences, and you had some great ones, that's for sure. It actually dovetailed well to my other comment around community acceptance of the food grown. You mentioned you were kind of scared at the very beginning when the first crop came out, and I'm sure you were not the only one, because it's an unusual way of growing food. And then the type of food, you mentioned some interesting varieties. That's also interesting. How did you find the reception was in your community? Was there lots of hesitation? And as far as learning and getting the community involved, whether it's children or adults for that matter, how did that go for you?
Oh wow, we started off pretty big. Things started well in the beginning. People were hesitant, of course. It's grown by artificial light. One, two, there's no soil involved. Three, it's coming from inside of a grow. Inside of our community hall. People kind of were taken back. Even myself, when we first started, I was kind of like, "You guys are crazy. You're never gonna get romaine lettuce out of there. You're never gonna get sweet basil out of there." I was just like, because that mindset. Hey, even myself, I had that mindset because it didn't come from the soil. There was no soil involved. There was artificial light. You guys are, playing with nutrients. My thought was, well, you're gonna have a bunch of, funny looking plants, and then we started growing, and okay, the romaine lettuce actually looks really beautiful. Look at it. It's green. There's no discoloration. It's, and they grow all in unison and they grow all the same size. And I was like, okay, just kind of had to really take that in. And then we did our first harvest. And I was kind of like, didn't really want to eat it yet. And then Isaac came to me and he's like, you need to try. You need to eat this. If you like vegetables, you eat this. So I took a kale leaf and I dipped it in some balsamic vinegar, and that's probably after that I was hooked. I was like, you know what? If this tastes like this, then what else? Well, how does this taste? How does that taste? Now it's like, okay, well, if I can grow this in my garden, I wonder how it would taste in the smart farm. Because a lot of the times, like Miyoung described, the freshness, it's so crisp. It keeps in your fridge long. Like when I go to the grocery store, I buy a bag of lettuce. It lasts maybe 2-3 days up in the paw. But I had gotten a bag of romaine lettuce in the back of my fridge. It was there maybe for 2.5 weeks. We opened it up, perfect, fresh, good, nothing wrong with it. And I was kind of hesitant myself too, because I was like, it's been sitting for almost 2 weeks. What if we get food poisoning? And we're like, well, worst come worst serve, we're gonna be sick for the next couple of days, but we didn't get sick from it. So again, that brought that to light too. That the food was not going bad within days, and like even people were met with that. Well, it lasts for so long. It's got to be fake, Well, you got to realize too. You got to realize the amount of how far food travels to get up here. How long has it been sitting in that house? How long has it been sitting in that truck and that, Yeah. So again, that opened my eyes up more to the way food is produced and the readily available stuff, like things that we take for granted, and how far it's traveled and what it's been exposed to, and gosh knows, like we're herbicide, pesticide free. We don't have any of that stuff on there. I have really bad allergies, so yeah, I'll have my run-ins where I'll eat strawberries and there's some sort of pesticide on it, and I'll have swollen lips the next day, and I'm like, okay, it's a side effect. It comes with that territory of wanting to eat right too, like even with the organic stuff.
Maybe Stephanie, you can mention about the elderlies, at nursing home. First they rejected, and then once they start to taste that, they keep coming back and then asking, right?
Oh yeah, that was the elderly too. Yeah, we were met with hesitation by them as well, and then as people started realizing, like we'd have like an open house where we do juicing, like we'd juice the vegetables, or make a smoothie to show them there's other ways you can do this. But yeah, we did a couple of afternoon events there, and I guess it kind of started turning. The shift started turning where we were starting to actually start to get people that coming in, requesting, and asking, when is your next harvest? When is your next? What are you guys growing? And even that, like when we started bringing in students that were working and other staff, and then working with like the restorative justice, because like there's so many aspects to it. I'm just like, holy, make sure I try to remember everything. But yeah, we brought in people who are in trouble with the law, and brought them in to do hours. They have to do community service hours. What's a good way? being in a smart farm, I found was a form of mental therapy for them because they get to actually see the plants, they get to grow them, they get to harvest, they get to bag, and they started to recognize, this is actually beneficial. I feel good. I feel healthy. Um, I feel good about myself. Type of mentality. We actually ended up. Sorry, my brother. We ended up hiring a couple of them as full-time staff. So, and unfortunately, COVID shut us down, but back up and running now. But yeah, it's interesting to go through that with them because they wanted to make change. Like we have students that are coming in, they start off in grade 9, 10, and the next thing you know, they're graduating and they're going to university to study. The other guy wanted to study what do you call it? To be an electrician because he found it so exciting to work the technology, like learning about it. He was working with me through the summer, and as a summer student, we had an electrical storm come through, and it fried 2 of our controllers. And like with the help of the South Koreans, they kind of walked us through how to rewire the controllers so that basically it was just a magnetic counterweight that had been demagnetized from lightning. So that was pretty neat to learn about too, because we're so scared. I'll be honest, we were so scared to touch these controllers because they're worth quite a bit of money, right? And here I am, I'm not an engineer, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, I just have a little bit of skill working in, the fueling industry because I used to work for Shell Canada. So, got the information and, well, not information, but, got the skills, how to take things apart, put it back together. But yeah, we took apart the controllers and we were kind of like, okay, well, if this works, this works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So from that, it was a learning curve too, because from that learning curve, we ended up installing what's called surge protector in this farm. So now all of the equipment is now protected. So if we have another electrical surge, because apparently that area where our smart farm is located, the community, well, the neighborhood, is known for being struck by lightning. I don't know why. There must be something in the ground. I don't know. But yeah, it's been struck by lightning 4 times in that area. So it was fun.
Stephanie, you can also mention that technology-wise, when you had that issue with the thunder, and fire the machine, actually that it's a Korean side that they were doing through the internet. They fixed it, right?
Yeah. Through
really cool, and I heard
through Skype meeting. Basically, that's how we did it. He sent me, just basically walked us through what was going on, and this isn't like real time. This isn't, like South Korea isn't exactly out back door. You can't just walk down the street and go see the technician and tell him, hey, I got a problem. But yeah, working through things like that was a lot of fun and very eye-opening. But it also showed us too, I'm not, like I said, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist. I go home at the end of the day to my son and my dogs. And working on that equipment like that, I was just like, it was very, okay, well, if I can do this, what else can I do? What else can I take on? What other types of roles can I put myself in and step to the plate and, challenging myself constantly with other things, like not only the growing aspect of it, but, the personal aspect of it, the social, working with the people. Because not only elders we work with students, we work with, we had there's a culinary arts program going for social assistance clients that we were partnering with and supplying them with produce to, teach social assistance clients how to budget, because what they're doing is teaching them how to budget on their low income and teaching them how to cook meals as well that were beneficial to them. Because again, it's coming full circle now where, they coming to realize, okay, well, health has to be involved in more areas and aspects of the community because, that's how we all learn together. So, like I said, like Miyoung said, we've kind of developed a circle now where
maybe yeah, Stephanie, maybe then you can work with Dr. Chang, and with the Canadian system, you have a Korean system, but with the Canadian technology can further improve your smart farm to work.
Right.
That'll be
So-
great idea.
We can
I'm
work
actually-
together still. Yeah.
I'm actually a little worried at the beginning when I start this research. I don't know if I didn't know if the community actually would accept the technology, and it's either technology itself is scary, and also the product come out of the technology. I guess after listening to Stephanie, I feel a lot better now. So I probably should put more efforts into developing technology. I know those technologies will work for the remote community of northern communities and would be accepted by people there, by the community there. That's good to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we had with the pregnant mother, my study, participants, we use the smart vertical farm produce the vegetables and then make it the sushi with the pregnant mothers. They actually enjoyed it, right? Because at least they can see that how to use those vegetables. Like something strange to them, then they see that how to do it. So that was a good demo, and they were well accepted.
It's been great discussion, but I do want to spend a bit of time getting some of the audience questions in here for you guys to chat about. Yeah, thanks, Josh, for putting them up. So maybe we can go through some of those, and you can take them as they come. Let me see here. The first question I see is from Song Liu, and it says, would you please elaborate more on the smart farm technology? Is it about growing plants without using soil, such as hydroponics? So who wants to take that on? Maybe any of you for that matter. Stephanie, is your system soil-based or water-based?
We are water-based. Aeroponics is the term that we use because we have basically it's like a big aquarium with minus the fish, but it's the system kind of operates like an aquarium. You got the aerator pucks and the UV filters inside the main tank, and then you have the feeding tanks that are hooked up. So yeah, and then the computer that runs the feeding system and the lighting system and controls the CO2, the oxygen, not CO2, CO2, EC levels, pH levels, and then also gives you your gives you data that you can read, so you can see where you're optimizing your growth, where you're optimizing your energy consumption and everything like that. It's pretty neat, actually.
Yeah, I want to sort of add to that. A hydroponic system that's commonly used in those smart farming systems. Basically, you use a media to actually as a physical support of the plant, and the nutrients, water actually will be supplied to the plant. And it's a very clean system. You don't have to worry about a lot of disease issues. And if you use it, then you have to change the after cropping, and that could be a challenge. In some remote communities, even getting a fertilized soil actually could be challenging too. So with the hydroponic system, actually, that's not an issue anymore.
Right, great. There was a question around the economics of it as far as bringing produce up versus producing it there. Did any of you want to comment on that? Maybe Stephanie, you can, from your perspective. How does that look? How is the cost coming out when you, for example, growing romaine lettuce? Go ahead.
Well, there isn't much of a value when you're growing lettuce. But if you go into specialty products, there is very you could make a very good market and very good profit. Again, just as long as you identify your specialty product, whatever it's going to be. I call it your niche product.
Right.
If you grow specialty tomatoes or strawberries that are strictly that have a high rating on the brick scale, or anything like that, or like I said, for us, identifying two products that are not available on grocery store shelves anywhere in North America and having them produced in the north, that opens up a whole market for us, right?
Yeah, very exciting. Back to you, Stephanie, for another question from the audience. This has to do with the biggest challenge you have faced in establishing the container farm at OCN. If you had to choose a challenge that was really hard to overcome, which one would that be from your end?
Well, coming from a First Nations community, it probably has to be dealing with my own people. I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the whole residential school and the mental impacts and long-term um, impacts that has had on the mentality of First Nations people. Um, a lot of the times we're faced with people who are still not well, they haven't, I guess, come full circle and identified why they have their addiction and things like that. So trying to help them work through that, hey, that's another aspect that has come, because a lot of the students or people that come in through restorative justice or that, or want to come in just to be around it because they say a positive feeling to be there. That probably has to be one of the biggest things that we've faced. And we are doing our best to try and help them, and at the same time trying to look after ourselves as well, because it does get very stressful, especially when you have a student that came in, and this is just one example, student that come in and that following week his infant child had passed away. Like that's a big mental um hurdle, especially for him to go through. So keep in contact with these students that come in and making sure that they're reaching out and getting the mental help that they need. That's probably one of the biggest challenges I've faced to date, aside from working with the technology and learning about it. But yeah, that's like the human aspect of it, working with those people who want to come in and work, and then having to help them deal with what they're going through. Because obviously you need people to work this thing, but you need your work, you need your staffers to be healthy, because usually what I tell them, like the motto they have while working in the room is, if you're having a bad day, you're working outside the room. I usually try not to allow people in the room with that bad energy, just because I'm pretty sure people have seen the studies where they have one plant, they put it in a bad environment, low lighting, they're swearing at it, yelling at it, doing all this other stuff, and they put another plant in a positive environment where it has full light and very good upkeep and people talking to it in a positive manner. It's been shown that there are growth rates that very big. I was actually surprised when I seen it myself. I went to a local presentation and they had two plants, same thing, same age, and and showed the outcome. I was just, to see the visual representation of it was actually pretty interesting.
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing that with us. And I could see that we wouldn't have thought about kind of the mental health aspects of the people that are accessing your facility. That wouldn't be top of mind from our perspective, right? That's very interesting to hear. I think I do want to go on and try to answer as many of these questions as they're coming in. I know there's lots of interest. So one of them is about a South Korean technology that you talked about, Miyoung and Stephanie. How does that compare to there's apparently an Ottawa tech container system called the Grocer. I hadn't heard about it, but maybe you have. Do you know that? And could you compare the two? Anybody who wants to take a stab at that?
I can probably get started. Because I know the system, the Grocer system. Okay. And the Korean system is basically a typical indoor farming, vertical farming system. So it's actually housed in the buildings. And the Grocer actually it's a true container system. It's actually built in a shipping container. So I think from the inside, it would not be much difference. Or hydroponic system, you operate in the same way, artificial lighting and all that. I think it's just the enclosure structure. The Grocer actually, same idea as we were trying, put everything into a shipping container. But the other system is actually just in the building. So that's as far as I can tell.
Is there? Do they also Grocer? Do they also use real-time monitoring?
I think that's, I don't know exactly what they have. This is a common sort of technology now. Most container-based farming system, they all have the remote control diagnosis, all that built in. And that's what I was saying. Like the inside would be more or less the same. It's just the shell.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, for me,
I
like
guess they're building container type as well, right, Stephanie? You're gonna order. You have ordered, or you're gonna order for container type for vegetable only because they use a different light intensities?
Right.
From my understanding, we have two containers coming. I think one of them is supposed to be like a test container for fruit. But I don't know. I seen this the differences between grocers and ours. Just like a visual representation of what I seen and what came to light from questions that I wanted to ask. You know how they have the ebb and flow systems and they kind of look like draining spouts. I was just kind of curious as to like what they're made out of because if anybody knows who lives in the north, hard water is a big thing and it'll eat through anything. Water will eat through anything. Now, for us, we use plastic food grade material and then other plastic parts that are Teflon lined on the inside. So for me that was kind of something I was like, okay, well, what is this container made of? Has it been tested long term? Has it been running like the way the smart heart farm has been, continually? And again, the thing that came up was, well, water, because anyone who knows pH levels in the north are anywhere from 8.2 all the way up to 9.6, just again depending on where you are. So what happens when hard water meets aluminum? It'll eat through the aluminum. It'll actually disintegrate the aluminum after long periods of time. So again, I was just, these are things that I noticed being a grower and somebody who's actually worked. Okay, well, what materials? Is it food friendly? Is it food safe? Are they using plastic? Are they using aluminum? Are they using, what type of the growth medium? What is that made out of? Is it sponge or are they using the new what do they call that? The What do they call it? There's like hemp fibers now that they're using, and they're also using different types of rock wool and
Yeah,
different types of other
coconut
plant
fiber.
medium. Yeah.
Yeah, that's for the aeroponic systems, right? Those rock wool type of materials.
Yeah,
right?
rock wool or coconut fiber.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, the ones that are I can't remember what it's called, but it comes in a big long strip and it's like little. I've seen those ones, and I know there is a system. Hudson's Bay, Saskatchewan. They have a system, and they have multiple rooms going in different types of settings. They're using Dutch technology, and they're growing and they're selling in their community. So they're creating their own little sustainable hub over there. Usually keep contact with people like that because I want to see what everybody's doing. I want to see what's all going on, what type of technology is available, what are you doing with your technology, what are you guys growing, what have you tried to grow, and what are your successes. Like same thing, all the questions that everybody always asks. Want to know, pick and prod. I always laugh because 4 years ago I would have been like, what is that? Now 6 years in, I'm like, I'm questioning. I'm like, well, what kind of growth material are you using? Oh, okay. So what type of nutrient blend are you using? Like questions like this, I never would have thought I'd be asking now. And I just laugh about it now. I'm just like, oh, geez, I sound like a nerd.
That's good. We're all nerds around here, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Just a quick one here. I know we have to cut this off short. We have so many questions and we can't get to them all. Maybe, you can connect with our guests separately later. But there's one that maybe encapsulates a bunch of questions, and that's about how much food you're producing in your community, Stephanie. And generally, is this a sustainable way of growing a lot of food there in your community? Do you need scale up? How many portions of food can you generate? Do you feel like there's more systems like this required in your community? So they're all bunched up in kind of the volume you're generating. Can you speak to that briefly?
Okay, well, before COVID hit, we were at capacity. I'll let you know that. Like we were at that point where when I had a distribution day, basically all I do is I put a notification on Facebook 3 days in advance. So this gives enough, notification for people to let other people know that, okay, Smart Farm's giving away greens. And
Right.
it's a First Nations community. We all know each other one way or another. So you know who's coming in through that door, and you know their family, the size. So usually the way we did it was, okay, we'd ask, okay, how many family members, how many of you are any of you diabetic, are any of you ask these certain questions. There's usually five questions that we ask. And then from there we would gauge how much product we would give them for the week or the 2 weeks. So they'd usually end up with a fairly good bundle. 3 to 4 bags of kale. A family of 4 would be 3 bags of kale, 4 bags of lettuce, depending on what was available. A bag of herbs or 2 bags of herbs, and they're usually just a small, not a very large, big bag, but just enough to distribute it around. And then we go from there. And then just as people came in, but we always told them, please allow elders to come first, people who are on low income and assistance, and are pregnant and nursing mothers, and then students. Those were usually our 4 target groups. And then after that, if we had anything left, what I do is I would load it up into my vehicle and take it to the different key areas in the community and have them distributed out. So that way I knew it was getting into the community. That way I knew nothing was going to be wasted. It just out that way, and it always worked better that way for us, because that way we know by that Friday we wouldn't have anything in that fucking cooler. We wouldn't have to worry about anything going to waste, because that was the thing. Okay, we're doing intentional growing and we don't want to waste anything. So that's another thing, because you go to the grocery store, you see how much is being thrown away. That's, I don't know, it's one of my biggest pet peeves. I wish they would find somewhere else to put that food.
Nazem, can I just add 2 numbers in terms of yield?
What?
Typical container, we're talking about 45 foot container.
Mhm.
So the annual yield of lettuce could be up to about 6 or 8 tons a year.
Yeah.
Which, if you compare with the field capacity, the field probably, if you do 2 crops a year, probably about 24 tons a year. So like a quarter of an acre equivalent.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
and if you get your growing cycles right, you could do 13 growth cycles in a year. So
Yes,
think
4
about
weeks,
that.
4 weeks a cycle. So this is actually sort of a conservative estimate. You could actually do better.
Yeah, if
And
you
you know what?
if you're. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to cut you guys off because we're out of time. But this has been so much fun, and
Oh my goodness.
time has flown by. I can't even believe it's 4:30 already.
Oh, it is.
But yeah, I know.
Yeah,
We could spend another hour chatting, I think. And I
Yes,
really
for sure.
apologize to our audience for not being able to take their questions. But again, our guests here are available. You can find them certainly on the internet and approach them separately. But at this point, I want to thank them all for joining me today and having such an engaging and interesting conversation. And I certainly enjoyed it and found it super interesting. So thanks again, Stephanie. Thanks, Chong, and thanks, Miyoung. On a separate note, we are having one more faculty conversation for June, and our topic will be pollinators. So I hope you can join us then, and watch for the notices on our social media accounts or by visiting our Make Manitoba CA website. And if you do not already receive our newsletter, AGE News, please make sure you sign up for it. You can find the links on our website as well. And with that, I'm going to have to close the night, and I wish you all the best and a great rest of the day. Take care, everybody.